I remember when we just started this online thing way back when, and I had a conversation with the band about what we were trying to do, nobody could do, which is have music where people were playing together. You guys are killing it. It's awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I know what the tracks sounded like before you put them together, Michael, so thank you. And it's amazing. So thank you for choosing to be part of this spiritual community today. We're grateful that you joined us. And we know you had choices, so we're grateful you decided to be here. And you know, if you're here, that that's the only way you get to hear the full Sunday CSLT morning experience, because we don't have authorization to post the music. So thank you for being here. Even if it's just for the music, I'm okay with that. And if you happen to be watching this later on YouTube, we're also delighted you joined us in that way. So today is the final Sunday, the final week of our tour of The Art of Possibility by Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander. I hope if you've been reading along that you've enjoyed this book as much as I have. It's a mind-expanding awareness to know that no matter what is actually happening in this actual factual world we're living in, that we always have an option of choosing how we see it and how we engage with it. That choice is entirely and only up to us. And oh, by the way, since I just heard a ladder in the background, it's going to be on the recording. So I have a handyman working on the other side of the wall, right behind the screen. So actual sounds are happening at my house besides me talking into the recording. Anyway, so today I'm going to be talking about the 11th and 12th practices. And of course, I'm going to be tying them back to Science of Mind principles. I'm going to start with the 11th practice, creating frameworks for possibility. It's not any surprise that the Zanders start this chapter by speaking about the March for Freedom and Jobs on Washington, D.C. that took place 57 years ago this past week, and about Dr. King's impassioned, eloquent, and magnificent I Have a Dream speech. It still amazes me that somehow, in the time before rapid and instantaneous communication that we all take so very much for granted, that 250,000 people gathered on the mall in the front of Lincoln Memorial on that hot August day in 1963. And it doesn't surprise me that Dr. King spoke for 20 minutes like any good preacher would, instead of the 4 minutes he was supposed to talk. I reread his speech yesterday, and I can feel that determination and that hope and the possibility in his words, even after all these many years. We have made some progress in reaching his vision as a country, and we have a good long way to go. And just because a vision is hard to reach doesn't mean we stop reaching for it. I know it's hard sometimes when it gets tough, that you just want to quit and give up. But it's like, no, if a vision is worthy, then we stay at it. And so that's kind of the question that I want to leave set for today and leave with you in the end. If a vision is worthwhile, no matter what, do we keep after it? So I want to start with a quote from Dr. Ernest Holmes from The Science of Mind, page 418. Paragraph 4. Ignorance stays with us until the day of enlightenment, until our vision toward the spirit broadens and casts out the image of no longer useful littleness. What we now experience, we may cease experiencing if we have the will and the imagination to set our vision in an opposite direction and hold it there. It is the office of the imagination to set the vision. The will should hold it in place until the creative genius of the inner life transforms the image of limitation and transmutes it into liberty under law. I think of will as tenacity, not as force, not as willpower, just strict tenacity, persistent application of intention and attention, and living in alignment with those ideals until the creative genius of the inner life transforms the image that we have in our mind into a reality under law. How willing are we to give up on the vision? How willing are we to not fall off the wagon? How willing are we to hold that vision against all voices that assure us that it's awful, that it's miserable, that it's horrible, that the world is going to hell in a handbasket? Whoops, I said the word hell. That everything is as bad as it could possibly be. How willing are we to hold the vision of the truth we wish to see in the face of everything that tells us it's not okay? And we know that the downward spiral, that negativity, is how our physiology and psychology is wired. That is what has kept the human species alive ever since the days when we were worried about saber-toothed tigers and things that would eat us if we went outside the caves at night. The Zanders wrote, "As a species, we are exquisitely suited to thrive in an environment of threat where resources are scarce and we're not always ready to reap the benefits of harmony, peace, and plenty. Our perceptual awareness is structured to alert us to real and imagined dangers everywhere. Yet we do have the capacity to override those hidden assumptions of peril that give us the world we see. We get to maintain the clarity to stand confidently in an abundant universe of possibility, no matter how fierce the competition, no matter how fearful people are, no matter how urgently the wolf may appear at the door. And we have to have the courage and the persistence to distinguish that downward spiral from that radiant realm of possibility, because that spiral will grab us and try to pull us down. So, what's this downward spiral thing? And how do we distinguish it from things we really do need to be paying attention to that aren't working, and things we need to be watchful about? Last Sunday, I spoke about the calculating self, the one that's always looking for a leg up or a way to play it safe and still get ahead. It's that fearful voice that lives in us and has decided the world is unsafe, and we must fortify or take some forceful action to protect what we perceive as ours. And we worry that it will be lost if we don't take a specific action. This is the key. Downward spiral talk is entirely reactive to circumstances, or our perceptions about circumstances, or things that appear to us to be at risk or wrong or problematic or in need of fixing. Downward spiral thinking is focused on risk, scarcity, and lack, and it's adamant in telling us what can't possibly be done, and promises, guarantees that things will go from bad to worse, and that we must take defensive action to preserve what's ours. And I know you know, or at least know of, people who act like this all the time. And sometimes even you and me act like this sometimes, or about some things. When I was working on this talk yesterday, I kept feeling pulled towards a piece of a poem by Robert Bly. This may be familiar to some of you who've been around a while. The poem is called One Bad Piece of Information, and it's totally descriptive of our calculating selves. Here it is. There's a boy in you, about 3 years old, who hasn't learned a thing for 30,000 years. Sometimes it's a girl. This child had to make up its mind how to save you from death. He said things like, stay home, avoid elevators, eat only elk. You live with this child, but you don't know it. You're at the office, yes, and you live with this boy at night. He's uninformed, but he does want to save your life, and he has. Because of this boy, you've survived a lot. He's got 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you. So that calculating self has 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. And right now, he or she or it or they is very persistently repeating them to you. So I have a story. Happened this week. Friday, I went to the dentist's office for a cleaning. My appointment in April was canceled because everything shut down. And I had an appointment scheduled for like the first week of August, and frankly, I chickened out. I just couldn't see myself going to the dentist. I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't happening. So this was a new dentist office. It was the office of a dentist that I have been searching for 2 years. I happened to find this guy when I had a crown broken 4 or 5 years ago, and he was fabulous. And he left the dentist office that I had been going to a couple of years ago, and I had been looking for him for years. So he finally resurfaced at a new office in a new part of town. So I knew I was in trouble Friday morning when I woke up with a nervous stomach, because that doesn't happen for me. And it's challenging sometimes to distinguish between the voice that's fear talking and the voice that's actually speaking common sense or speaking sense or speaking truth. And it's imperative for us to be conscious enough of how we think and how we believe and how we process information that we can tell them apart. So I sat with it for a long time. I meditated on it to try to distinguish if I was just listening to that fearful, calculating voice, or if this was a reasoned decision that I was reacting to, that it was too scary still to go to the dentist. And I decided it was just nerves. So I journaled about it and I meditated some more. And I went, paying very, 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 very close attention to how I felt every single step of the way. And of course, the dental office was magnificent. They were immaculate in their preparation and their care. And it was a fabulous visit. And being able to see this dentist and reestablish a relationship with somebody who does really good quality work, I'm just delighted. So I had to step back and recall my vision about the possibility of finding this really good dentist, because they're kind of hard to find in my history anyway, who had done exceptional work for me and I really trusted. We always have the choice to look at any activity or experience in the light of possibility that it could represent, or in the light of its fearful downward spiral. We get to choose again and again and again and again. And we can make conscious use of our way with words, the way we speak, the way we think. to define new frameworks of possibility, to give us a life that's most contributory, most unencumbered, and most open to participation and engagement. What would happen if we decided that that was who we really were? Not the scaredy cat self, but the centered self, the self that actually was clear, was connected, was paying attention, and was engaged. We're always at choice, and we always get to decide how we wish to be in the world. So I want to move quickly on to the 12th practice, telling the we story. How can we experience ourselves as bigger than just the additive of what you want and what I want? We talk about this idea of synergy and how when people work, think, or pray together, they can create more than they could individually create. We talk about that all the time. And the Power of 8 groups that we did a couple of years ago certainly demonstrated this. These small groups got together and they intentionally focused on good. And some of the stories that come out of Lynn McTaggart's book, The Power of 8, talk about meditation groups and prayer groups that got together and intentionally decided that they would hold the vision that violence would go down in a specific city where violence was rising. And it did. Can we perfectly, absolutely prove that that's what happened? No, we can't. But it's a really strong correlation that this group of meditators meditating on peace for that particular place. And then they measured the violence and the violence diminished. We are more than the sum of what we think we are. And we have to remember that. Because it's easy to forget. There's a lot of evidence to the contrary. In our own Prosperity Plus 3 alumni mastermind group, they don't know what to call themselves, so it's all those words. They continue to demonstrate this for themselves and for each other every time they meet. And so if you're on the fence about participating in the P plus 3 class, lean towards taking the class. It's fabulous information and it gives you new tools that you can use to create more abundance of all good in your life. And Pat's a fun teacher, so even on Zoom, I promise you it's a fun class. So the Zanders have a couple of really remarkable stories in this chapter called Telling the We Story. One of them in particular, a very, very gifted storyteller, was spinning yarns one night, and he told a bunch of high schoolers the whole sweep of Jewish history, from the early beginnings with Father Abraham, through all of the Jewish history, through all of the great events and all the horrible ones, all the way up to 1947, just before the land was partitioned to give the Jews a homeland. And it was just this magnificent, just gripping story that caught everybody's attention and imagination. And then he started again. And he told the whole story of the Arab peoples, starting with the same patriarch, Abraham, and included all the inventions and all the achievements and all the troubles and all the challenges, and ended his tale in 1947 at that same parcel of land. And one of the kids listening to the stories, not knowing the history of what the rest of us who have been paying attention to the experience in the world of what has happened in that part of the country, the globe, since 1947, looked at the guy and said, wow, what a wonderful opportunity. What a privilege for both those peoples to share that land and that history. If only that sentiment had been the one that guided the relationship between those two peoples from 1947 to present. It's never about sides. It's never about who's right or who's wrong, though our human calculating minds certainly want to go there. How do we see the bigger picture where everybody actually gets what they need? How do we see the opportunities that we're looking at, the events, the experiences that we're having, because we've got plenty to work with? How do we see them and say, wow, what a wonderful opportunity this is? How do we awaken ourselves and then have that ripple out? We're not making anybody do anything. This is all work we do ourselves. So CSLT has a story too. It seems like 6 years instead of 6 months since we did our 2020 community envisioning. The credo or vision for ourselves that came out of that weekend practice that we did was this. If you had printed bulletins in front of you, you would be able to read with me. CSLT inspires spiritual expression in community with all and offers an accepting, loving, and peaceful way of living, a joyful, healthier, and more abundant life. It's definitely more challenging to do this in our physically distanced world. Still, we have moved forward on some items, perhaps not in the way we intended. So I'm going to remind you of a couple of things we've done. I was kind of surprised. One of the things we've done, and it came out of that weekend, is we've made adjustments in the classes so that they're not so late, they don't last so late in the night, and they're more accessible to people because they're all on Zoom now. And we've added more types of classes with more different voices, more different teachers. So here's something that what happened the way it happened wasn't expected, but our intention, our vision to reach out and touch more people in classes is happening because we're having Zoom classes and several different kinds of classes. We also wanted to be more visible. And because we've moved entirely online for the duration, we've inadvertently created a stronger outreach program and left a better trail with our YouTube channel. We're advertising in the Desert Times and have gotten column inches a couple of times in the Arizona Daily Star. It's pretty amazing, right? None of those things were predictable back in January. We just knew we wanted to be more of a presence. And how it shows up is anybody's, guess. And you may not remember it, but way back when, one of the things we wanted to do was have a game night, which we did do on Valentine's Day night. And we started, one of the conversations we had was, we don't have language. How do we speak what is the science of mind philosophy in, 20 or 30 seconds? So we started having second Sunday what we believe sessions. We got 2 in before we were shut down with in-person meetings. If we want to do this on Zoom, we can do it. We haven't decided we want to re-engage in that way. So if that's something you'd be interested in, speak up. Let us know, and we'll make space for it. So how do we build on what we already are and create collective space for a bigger us? This is something for all of us, and I don't mean me. God knows I don't mean me, or even just the formal leadership. It's not just that little tiny group for them or us to think about. It's for everybody to consider. How do we want to be? How do we want to appear? How do we want to show up? in the days, weeks, and months to come. So I'm going to close. If we were doing morning practice today, which we didn't because it's Sunday, this is the reading we would have used today. It's from Dr. Ernest Holmes' 365 Science of Mind. There is but one presence in the universe. Since it is in and through everything, it must be in and through you. This presence manifests itself in and through all forms, all peoples, and all conditions. This presence is life itself. Its nature is love and givingness. Negation may be an experience, but it can never be the ultimate truth. Life cannot operate against itself. Always, the negative is overcome by the positive. Good cannot fail to overcome evil. Negative experiences may seem to exist for a brief moment, but truth exists forever. The consciousness of good must overcome the appearance of evil. Finally, good will obliterate everything unlike itself. And this is important, even as the sun dissolves the mist. So obliterate is one of those words that sounds like a steamroller. But the sun doesn't steamroll over mist. It just erases it. So if good obliterates evil, as the sun erases the mist, that's a vision to hold. And then I want to close with, it's not Derek Rydell's Emergence, it's Barbara Marx Hubbard's Emergence. There are two books by the same name. I want to close with a preview of next month's book. And I'll write about it in the newsletter this week as well. A universal human is one who is connected through the heart to the whole of life, attuned to the deeper intelligence of nature, and called forth irresistibly by spirit to creatively express his or her gifts in the evolution of the self and the world. Above all, a universal human has shifted identity from a separated self to that deeper self that is the direct expression of Source. To become a universal human is to evolve consciously, to choose a path of development that has never been mapped before in a world that has never existed before. Emergence is a way for those of us who feel called to enter into the co-creation of a new world through the fulfillment of our own life purpose, creativity, and love. It's a big challenge. It's a big ask. So we get to decide, each one of us, whether we wish to step into a bigger, more inclusive world or not. I kind of think I do. If you want to join me, please do so. And knowing in doing that, you bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I want to close with the closing prayer. And I'll circle back to David's song, In the Silence. In the silence, there is peace, unspoken joy, life, love, a greater reality. And I remember that silent presence lives deeply and profoundly within every single individual. And each one of us has the chance, has the opportunity to go there and experience that. Because it's already resident in each one. It's already there. It's already part and parcel of the beingness. of every single individual. And each one gets to choose how to see that, how to find that, how to use that as the touchstone, as the cornerstone. And let the rest inform, but not drive. So I celebrate this awareness. I celebrate the ability to remember, to rebuild, to recreate, to put back together that great good that lives at the core of each of us. And I choose to live in and from that space as often as I remember. And I know that same skill set lives within each and all. I feel so grateful for everyone who came out today to participate in this spiritual community, and I celebrate the great good that is done by every individual. I know each one is blessed by their decisions and choices, and each one blesses their world as they experience it. In great joy and delight, I relax, allow, and let it be. And so it is.
So it is.